This video is a wake-up call if you are thinking about starting a nonprofit in 2025 or you're running a nonprofit and you're new and still in the startup phase. I have 3 important pieces of advice that everybody should consider when you're trying to figure out if this is really the year you should be doing this. So in this video, we're going to be talking about your focus, what you should be paying attention to. Then we're going to talk about asking and what that means for you and being bolder about asking. And then finally, we're going to talk about you being a leader. And that's the most important point that I want to bring out. So I hope you watch to the end because that is so vital to your success. So here's my first point. You have to focus. There are so many people who start their nonprofits out of the goodness of their hearts, but when I ask them, well, what's your mission or what do you want to do? They say, well, I want to help the homeless and I want to help moms and I want to help people who don't have food and I want to help everybody, right? But you cannot afford to be disjointed or all over the place with the types of services you want to provide right now. And the reason why I say that is because there's a lot happening right now. There's a lot of news. There's just a lot of stuff. And people are stressed, people are distracted. And when you come to them and present your mission or you present the need for funding for your nonprofit, if you are all over the place, people are going to immediately shut down. If someone asks you what you're doing and they're interested in the work that you do, but you say, well, we do this, but you also could help this, but you also could help this, then it's really hard for that person to focus and figure out how they can help you right then and there. So my advice to you is don't try to do everything under the sun. Focus on one thing, one service, one program you want to do really, really well and hone your craft on that one thing. And I know that there's so much in your heart that you want to do, but right now is not the time to try to do all that. You can absolutely phase it in. You can build and grow and scale to that point, but you really need to start in one place. Learn how to message the need for that one program. Learn that programming and why it's important inside and out. Learn the needs of your target population. Listen to their stories. Figure out what resonates with your donors from those stories and get really good at telling the story of your one program. And here's the thing, there are going to be so many great ideas that bubble up in you from doing the work, but I would be very careful about venturing into something new unless you've done the work to assess whether or not the need is there in terms of people who would get the services and if it resonates with donors and there's a funding stream available to support that. If you don't have at least those 2 things in place, I would be very, very careful about venturing out into something else. And you can also assess whether what you're doing right now is the best thing you should be doing. Maybe you should pivot to something that has a greater need, something that people really can gravitate to, because people need something to hold on to. And again, if you're giving them 10 things to hold on to, they're not going to be able to handle it. So to sum up, even though it may hurt a little bit to hear this, or you may be frustrated and say, well, Tiffany, I want to do all these things. I say to that, you can eventually, but start small and then grow from there. Number 2 is around asking and about being bolder about asking. So I've worked with countless nonprofit founders. I've been doing this since 2016. And I realized one thing that holds people back from reaching the next level is their fear, hesitation around asking. Because people have these gnawing thoughts, whether they want to accept it or not, that asking people for money or asking people for help is begging. Or it's a pride thing where you feel like I shouldn't have to need to ask for anything. This is my idea. This is something that I wanted to do. Why do I always have to ask other people to come help me or do things for me or with me? I can do this on my own. And those thoughts can be really damaging to your growth because the reality is nonprofits can't be done alone. And I know there are some people who watch my videos who are like, I'm doing it on my own. This is my own thing. But generally, nonprofits are not meant to be a solo exercise. They're not meant to be your personal pet project. It's an actual official business. It's an actual federal tax designation that has rules around it. And whether you like the rules or not, you have to follow those rules. Now, if you stay pretty small, some of those rules aren't as stringent for you. But if you want to grow, then you have to expand your network and you have to be able to ask for money and to ask for help. So I want to focus just on money really quickly. A lot of people are afraid to ask for money because they're afraid of how it makes them look. They are afraid of the image that they're portraying when they go out and ask people for money. But this is what I'll say to that. You're not going to get it if you don't ask. So if you want to have a six-figure nonprofit, if you want to have a nonprofit that grows enough to support your community, then you need money, and you're not going to get the money unless you ask. And I know some of you are like, well, I'll just write grant applications and just win grants. That strategy doesn't work as well, especially when you are a startup only leaning on or depending on grants. At some point, you will have to ask someone directly, face to face, for money. And at some point, if you want to grow, you're going to have to ask them for substantial amounts, not $25. Because I know a lot of people are like, well, it's just $20 will get us this, or just $30 will do this for us. But at some point, you have to be comfortable asking someone for $5,000, for $10,000. And it takes a sense of boldness to do that. And I'm just going to be honest, in this time right now, you don't have time to wait or time to give into your feelings or your fears that if someone will look at me crazy or think I'm different because I'm asking for money. Let me tell you, some funding streams are drying up. The president is actively and forcefully taking away unfairly and unjustly money from nonprofits, from state government, from other institutions. So all of that money that you rely on that you may not think is at risk or in danger is absolutely at risk and in danger. You got to be creative. You got to find different ways. And one of the best ways and most efficient ways to make money is to ask people directly. So you have to be bold. You can't sit back and wait for things to come to you. You cannot sit back and wait for money to come your way. And I'm saying this with love. Because of the environment that we're in, there are a lot of nonprofits that have to cut back. There are nonprofits that are going to have to shutter their doors. This happened in the first Trump administration, and this is no different, and it's actually worse. So this is not the time to be shy about asking for funding, about seeking new ways and avenues to raise money. This time period requires you to be bold. And this isn't different than what I would say on any day. All right, there have been videos in the past where I've told you and challenged you to be bold, but especially right now, this is the time for you to be bold and to not be afraid to ask. And the third most important piece of advice is you have to show up as a leader. And again, this is a piece of advice that I've always given in my nonprofit videos. But as I said before, there's a sense of urgency around this in this time period right now. You are the leader of your nonprofit. You did not become a founder of a nonprofit or the lead of a nonprofit just to do services. It's not enough to do that, because as a CEO, as a founder, you have to push the need for your mission. You have to talk to people about why your services are needed. You have to talk to people about the perspectives that people often don't see, that you see on the ground doing your work every day. People actually need to hear from you, and you are the person. It's not anyone else. It's not the person that you're looking at, or not the person that you see all the time showing up in videos or on TV. You are actually the person who needs to speak up, who needs to say certain things. Are you seeing people struggling or suffering as a result of things happening in your community? And it could be for various reasons. Well, you need to show up and tell people what's happening. Why am I saying this? Because people get away with doing evil, unjust, and downright mean things when we are silent about how it's impacting us. And right now, people need to know that there's a real life impact and a real life cost to these decisions that are being made at the highest levels. And if you don't share that, then we go along with our day like nothing is happening. Well, I don't see it happening in my community, or I've never heard that happening, or that must not be true because I don't see it. Well, a lot of times people suffer in silence, or a lot of times in order to do the work, you just put your head down and do the work. But I challenge you, I implore you to talk about the impact that's happening in a real way right now, because people can hide behind what they think they don't know, or what they pretend they don't see. But when you are a voice and you share the information that's happening, when you share people's stories, then you have to share humanity with people. Then people have to see what's happening to their neighbor. And whether they realize it or not, or want to admit it or not, when something negative happens to a community in our country, and this is specifically for the United States right now, it happens to all of us, whether we realize it or not. And people need to know what the real life impacts are, and they need to hear from you. You are the person who can do that. So utilize your social media channels, utilize your community events, utilize all that you can to get your voice out there, to share information about the work that you do, but not just in a way to talk about your organization, but talk about the need. Talk about why your organization is needed. Because if you don't, then people will assume you're not needed. And you know for a fact, the work that you do every day and the people you see every day, there absolutely is a need for the work that you do. So to sum up that one, because I'm really passionate about that one in particular, you are a thought leader in your space. You are the person who can share what's happening, and you have to challenge some things and misinformation about what's happening in your community in real time. People need to touch, see, and feel what you're doing. People need to see that. And whether or not they want to grapple with it or accept it, that's on them. But it really is important for you to do your job to lift up the stories and the voices of the people who are often unheard and ignored. After hearing all of this, you really need to consider whether or not it's your time to start a nonprofit or keep running your nonprofit. And I understand that you may not want to do it, but if you do and you need help, I do have a free startup checklist. If you comment startup checklist below, I will send you the link so you can download and see the steps it takes to start your nonprofit. If you need help with running and starting your nonprofit, visit me at bossonabudget.com. I have resources there just for you. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.